foolish go to sink. It can often be fatal, so to speak. Skeletons, skeletons.
Wonderful, fantastic, great to see you.
And you, man, and you. Thanks for doing this.
Well, no, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me, of course. First things first, how are you at the moment?
I'm really, really good, actually. I've just, yesterday, I literally today just had 2 masters sent through me to check for the second album.
Oh, I was about to say, it seems really, really close to get masters through for what's about to happen.
Basically, I've just got so many songs that are there, and my producer Neil Taylor keeps hearing some, and he says, "I really like that. We ought to do it." So then we end up doing one. And what happened with the album was we had the album all set up, and as I did another song, Neil would then say, "That's got to go on the album." So that, and I go, "You don't think it's just newitis, do you?" And he's going, "No. We'll take something off and put it on." Then the record company would turn around and say, "You can't do that. We've got the album sorted." And I said, "Just the one, just the one." Yeah, okay then. So then when I went back the second time and said exactly the same thing, he went, "What are we going to do with those other songs?" And I said, "Well, they go on the second album." He said, "But you've already got 6 for that album." I said, "Yeah, I just need 2 more, and that's that album finished." And those 2 were done yesterday, and we've just had the masters through, and they sound astounding. So I'm quite a lot of buzz. I mean, I've got a Dolby Atmos system here. My God, the sound from that thing. Well, I said to the producer yesterday, if only everybody had Dolby Atmos, we'd be quids in.
Yeah, then everybody be hearing it as it should be. It's so funny to hear you talking about the future, because obviously at the time of recording, we are exactly 1 month away from the release of your debut solo album, Skeletons. So I have to ask you then, where is your head at with that release right now? Because obviously you will have been sitting with it for a while.
Oh, yeah. I suppose those songs were written last summer. So we've spent 6 months, me and Neil, basically putting those together. And of course, I've got the white labels here, and I've listened to them twice. Keep on thinking, no, I don't want to hear them. You know what it's like. The weird thing is, whilst I was waiting for those for the pressings, I actually listened to. I caught one of them on my phone, and I thought, God, that sounds good. And I thought, shit, that's on the album. Wow. So then I had listened to the others, and I thought, hey, they're really good. You forget, it's a bit like you ask artists if they listen to their own albums. They often say, no, I don't go back and listen to anything. But then if you happen to be somewhere and you start hearing them, it's amazing how you look up into the ether and think, my God, they were actually quite good.
An opportunity to refresh as well, to get that refreshing take in it.
Yeah.
So for those who know Private Dicks more than anything else, how far removed would you say is your solo stuff from that band? E.g., is it easy crossover for fans?
No. Completely not. I mean, the Private Dick stuff was written in 1979. So I was inspired by the breakthrough of Elvis Costello. So the band that I was in before, we'd split up, and that was when punk was really taken off in 76, 77. And then you had sort of the come down in 78 and the beginning of what the record companies and the music press said was new wave. Then that was when the musicians started to get into the feeling of punk, but bringing in more chords. So they didn't just have 3 chords anymore. They were bringing in a 4th one, man. So
Mad.
yeah, and I heard Elvis's first album, and I mean, it blew me away. And I was writing already with my new songwriting partner, and we needed to find a rhythm section. And quite by chance, my old drummer, his girlfriend, actually said to me, "Well, my brother and his mate have got a band together, but they're really good." And I
Mm.
said, "How old are they?" And she said, "Well, 16 and 17." And I went, "Oh, yeah, okay, 16, 17-year-old." And very patronizingly, I said, "I'll go and check them out, okay?" And we went down there and just went, wow. So we took them on board. They had another guitarist with them. So at that point, he was very much into Susie and the Banshees. So the stuff we were doing then just wasn't working, but it was quite dark and a little arty.
Mm.
So that when he moved to London because he was going to do a psychology degree, so off he went, and we sat in the pub saying, "Well, what are we going to do then?" And then me and the guitarist said, "Well, actually, we've got this song that we haven't tried because of Chris, because it's totally different what he wants to do. But now he's gone, it's a bit Elvis Costello-ish." Well, they went, "Well, we'll try it." So we went down in the rehearsal place, and in 20 minutes we had the debut single ready. And of course, I had all these songs I hadn't used that were waiting, so we started piling those in, and they were all they sound very much 1979. The interesting thing for us is now that we've just come off that 2-week tour,
Mm.
and I must be honest, the venues that we were playing, we knew were quite freshy, were quite growly. They would be having a lot of the new stuff that was there, a lot of rap and stuff like that. But the interesting thing that came out of this was the fact that the sound guys, who were obviously that bit older, would come up to me afterwards and say, "Thanks very much for that." And I'd say, "For what?"
Mm.
And they said, "For having a proper singer. We don't hear them anymore." And I went, "Wow." And he said, "And songs with middle eights and choruses. Wow." And it's almost like 45 years later, we've actually hit somewhere where people are going, "Oh, it's nice to have a tune back."
Mm.
Now, the people we were playing on the same bill, they were great, really, really great stuff. And I really appreciated it, but it just seems as if our stuff had dropped right in at a time where that people were actually ready to hear something from 45 years ago. It was really strange. But the stuff all that stuff I did back then was rather
Yeah.
like all about my personal life. And basically, it was about heartbreak, and it was about drug taking and drinking and all the usual things. And then when the band split up, I'd met the woman that I was going to marry. I was really pissed off with the music business at that point because we'd been really let down by our manager. I think have you heard about that? He was
Hmm.
all the shitty contract, and he was the guy who
Indeed.
discovered Wham and all those people. And so I was really pissed off, and I just thought, well, I'm coming up to 30. I said I'd get married at 30, so I got married at 30, and decided that was it for me. And then 6 months later, out of the blue, I get somebody phone up and ask if I'd do front of video for them because they had a good song they wanted to get out. And I said, yeah, okay. Then they asked me, would I do a gig with them? And when I listened to their other stuff, I said, well, I don't know. We'd have to work for 3 months and change these songs and make them more commercially available. I said, I'm not talking about, and basically they were a fantastic band, but they had no
Mm.
material. So I went in and basically rearranged their stuff, and we went and did the gig. and got offered a record deal. Now, you know, this is just crazy again that these things happen. And as it turned out, the record label that offered us the deal was the same label that my record producer, Neil Taylor, was on himself at that time. And he had a duo with a guy called Charlie Jones. And whereas Neil went off to play with Tears for Fears and Robbie Williams, Charlie Jones went off to play with Robert Plant, married Robert Plant's daughter, and then ended up in the sort of reformed Led Zeppelin. So, yeah, it was funny stuff. So anyway, our contract with those guys didn't actually materialize in the end, because rumor has it that all the bands that the A&R guy who signed us was caught in the toilets at the record company drinking terps, so methylated spirits. And they sacked him on the spot, and then just told all the bands that he'd signed, no, sorry, we're not having anything to do with him. So that was the end of that. So then I ended up with a duo, a German guy and a young kid who was one of the first people, I think, in this country to actually use samplers. He had a sampler. This was 1985. And he was sampling film tracks to French conversation and things like that to put into tracks. And it was amazing. And the response we got was incredible. And we soon had a manager in tail, and he was flogging us around. We weren't going out to do any gigs, but we were just keeping on churning out the material, and we went to see a couple of record companies to talk to them. And that at some point, these guys were 10 years younger than me. So by this time, I'm in my mid-30s. And I could see the record company thinking, well, he looks the same age as them. I was quite young looking back then. Don't be taken in by this old man. And they, when I was talking to them, they would say something and I would ask a pertinent question back. And I think they were thinking, hello, this guy's more experienced than we think. Exactly how old is he? And then when they found out, they basically said, well, there's 2 points. One, we can't really put this amount of money into a band with a 35-year-old singer because that's not done. And the other thing is, and I said, you want a girl singer with long blonde hair, a big chest and long legs, correct? And they went, yeah. So that's what I did. I went and got them. And they, within weeks of having that girl singer, they got offered a deal which was worth $1.5 million. I mean, it's, you know, so that was enough for me. I thought, right, it's time for me to get out. So my wife was pregnant by that time with our first child. So I said, right, that's it. I'm just going to get out and just go and get some other work. I've had a good run. That's it. And so I literally took myself off to university and went and did a history degree. And then I ended up working in essentially my wife's family business. And then it was in the noughties with the advent of broadband that suddenly we started getting all this interest in from Japan, which was a mind blower because I mean, the boys, we were still great mates and we were godparents to all our children. So we were still very close. So I used to speak to them probably once a week, each of them. And I had to ring them up and say, here's this guy from Japan who says he wants to put our album out. So basically, each one of them said, what fucking album? I said, well, the one we're going to put together now, because we've got all the demos done and everything else. And as it turned out, the guitarist is a post-production engineer. So he had his own studio. So I said to him, can you put it together in an album for me? Yeah, no problem. So we put it together, sent it out to this guy, and he put it out on CD in Japan. And we're told he sold 5,000 copies. Because then he got back to us and said, have you got a live album? And I said, I'm sure we can find one somewhere.
Mm.
I went to the guy that is actually putting my solo album out now, who owned Heartbeat Records that we were on at that time. And he said, I think I've got a board mix from you at the music machine in London, I think, in the attic somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. So he found it. So we sent it down to our guitarist in his studio, and he played through it, and he said, well, most of it sounds pretty good. I can put some stuff, I can put some extra guitars on, but he said that the majority of the vocals are fucked. And I said, well, that's no problem. I'll do them again. So literally, that was our Live at the Marquee album.
Mm.
And that was put out in 2005 in Japan. And accordingly, he said he sold 5,000 copies. We didn't see any money, but to be honest, we were just thrilled that there were people who wanted to hear stuff from that long ago that we thought had disappeared into the ether, had gone forever. So we were just really excited by that. And then he put out our first single on vinyl, and out in Japan. That sold a lot. So in the meantime, then I started getting calls from Sweden for interviews, and then fanzines were calling up and asking to do some interviews. Why was this happening? And then this young kid in Germany who had his own record label and his own band, he rang me up, and I remember this really well because I picked the phone up and the guy says, hello, is that Gavin? And I said, it's Gavin King. Yes, yes. Oh, my name is Kidnap, and I sing for a new wave, for a power pop band in Berlin. I'd like to bring you over to go on tour with us. And I said, I think you've got the wrong band. And he said, really? And I said, well, yeah, there's a band in Leeds called Private Dicks as well. And there's also an American one. They all came after us. We're the originals, but it wouldn't be us that you want. And he said, Gavin King, She Said Go? I said, yeah. He said, you're the band I want. I want you to come to... So I had to ring the boys up and say, hey, boys, we better have a rehearsal. We hadn't played together for, at that time, must have been 30 years. 25, 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. And we just got together and it was like riding a bike. And we went to Germany and we had a whale of a time. It was fantastic. Now, of course, by this time we were all married. We had children. And I'd been married at this time about 25, well, it was about 23 years at that point. And my wife was never really enamored of me being in the business. The bass player's wife hated the band. And all of a sudden, we're going out on the road again 35 years later with these women that we're married to who got together as very good friends and said, well, I'm not putting up with that. And it caused a lot of ructions. Long story short, the bass player got divorced in 2008, and I was divorced in 2009. The drummer is okay because he's a very rich property developer. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, he actually talks like this. You're all right? How's you? Wife this? All right. Real Bristol. And the other guy has got a really understanding Catholic wife who thinks that he should do whatever he feels like doing, which is very nice. So then that's basically how that happened. And we still went over to Europe doing some stuff, and then we were going over again to Madrid. We went to France. We did the Road to Ruin Festival in Rome, where we were second on the bill to Brian James from the Damned. And Brian James had Sham 69 without Jimmy Percy backing him. And Neil, my producer now, he said, hey, I fancy coming out for the weekend. I'll come and play with you. She said, great, okay, fine. And so he turned up and we went on to do our sound check, and we got told this afterwards. One of Sham 69 turned to Brian James and said, they brought a ringer in. He said, what do you mean? He said, that's Robbie Williams' guitarist on stage there. Brian James says, well, we ain't following them then. And before we knew it, they got onto the promoter and we were told we had to go on last. James was going on before us. Well, we stayed sober, completely and utterly sober, waiting to go on. The place was packed. It held 2,000 people. There had been 2 other nights before, and this was the main night. And when this happened, Neil said, the bastards, I've stayed sober for this. Right, well, I've had enough. I'm going to get shit-faced. So we all went to the bar and started drinking Bloody Marys for some reason. Somebody is filming this for us, right? They're filming this. And Brian James finishes, and we think, oh, that's going to be the end. Everybody will leave. When we actually came on stage, the place was still packed. And Neil said to me, this is all on YouTube, by the way. You can actually see the film of this piece. We walk on the stage. Neil says to me, I'll go on and I'll do a little bit of wacky guitar work for 10 seconds while you walk on, and then we'll start the first number. Well, about a minute later, he's on his back, kicking his legs, feet in the air and playing manically. We walk on and we're going, get up, you bloody arsehole, play the bloody songs. We go into the first song, but everybody starts in the wrong place. And it's chaotic, absolutely chaotic. And the poor promoter, he thought this is going to be a disaster. As we finished that one, and I just turned around and said, wait, get your act together. And they all went, yeah, right. We went into the second number, it flew, the sound was great. And as soon as I got to the choruses, the audience knew all the words. I mean, it's one of the proudest moments of my life, apart from my children, that actually happened. So basically, we get to about 2013 and we put a single out because we're going abroad. We're going to the club to launch it anyway. So we did that. And then we said, well, that's it then. You know, we've had a good run. What was that, 6-7 years, something like that, you know, of that again. So, and we just said, well, we'll leave it now. So that's what we did. So I was still writing stuff. I had another songwriting partner working with him, which didn't really go anywhere. And then I moved here, where I'm living now in Bristol, in 2018, at the end of 2018. And the guitarist from Private Dicks actually said to me, he said, I've been thinking, if you were to die now, people would think you were just a screeching rock singer. He said, as I know, you've got a really, really nice vocalist voice. He said, you're a proper singer. But he said, in the Dicks, you can't do that because they're all high ranges and you've got to get up there and you've got to jump about. And he said, I think we should record some of your songs and then we can slowly build them up into an album. You can put it out on CD and at least that'll be there for people and they'll be able to say, I didn't know he could sing like that. And I said, well, that's really nice of you. Thank you. And he said, no, I think it's really important. So we went to a studio in Brighton on the south coast and we just did it with an acoustic guitar and him. And he played the acoustic guitar and I just sang and the guy there recorded it. And then he took that away and then we really didn't do anything with it because he was so busy with his own work. And then came lockdown. And then during lockdown, we were looking for things to do. And did we go to my solo album? no, we decided to put out a live Private Dicks album. Because I said to him, well, we've got that recording from Berlin in 2013. And he said, it's rubbish. It's all.
Mm.
And I said, well, I think there's one good track. So he said, I'll have a listen and I'll come back to you. And then he comes back to me and he said, well, I think I've rescued one track. And he said, it sounds good. I've put some more guitar and I'll send it to you. And I said, oh, that's great. And in between time, I got back to him to say, that sounds really good. And he said, I've done another one. I said, have you? Slowly but surely, he managed to rescue this whole album from the Wild at Heart in Berlin in 2013. And the only thing missing were the vocals. So he said to me, if you can do the vocals, and I said, look, this is doing the songs from 45 years ago. They're in the same key. You haven't tuned down, and you expect me to do that. And he said, look, I'm going to send you a box and a microphone, and I'll show you how to do it. You just plug in. I'll be down in my studio. You are 200 miles away, but I'll play the songs to you, and you see if you can put the vocals on. And I said, yeah, well, good luck with that, mate. We did it. He actually says the vocals are better now than they were 45 years ago. And they're still, so I'm coming 72 and I'm reaching notes that I honestly never expected to reach when I was in my 20s, let alone then. We did, and we got the album together and we put it out on vinyl. And again, we went over to the club in Berlin and we launched it. So that was that, and we had a great time. We said, well, that's the end, boys. You know, we had a big goodbye party. And then lockdown ended, and the guitarist said to me, I really think I've been listening to the stuff that you did, and there's this one track I think is really nice, and I've got people to play on it. I'll send it to you. And it was called I Really Care, and it was written in 2000. But the guitarist said, your vocals sound great on it. It's really nice. And of course, it's totally different to the Dicks, because you've got the Dicks high energy up there stuff, really rocking, and this was a ballad. And he said, but your vocals, and he said, it does exactly what I wanted to do, show people that you were a singer. And I said, well, okay. So he sent it to me, and I said, yeah, it's really nice. It was really late night, laid back. It had a stand-up bass on it. It had piano, and it just sounded really, really nice. But at the same time, we sent it to Neil Taylor, and he said, that's a great song. Would you mind if I had a go at it? And we said, no, you carry on, mate, no problem. Well, he sent back this track and we went, bloody hell. It was totally different to the guitarist version. It was, how can I put it? It was a bit heavier, heavy drums on it and things like that. And I said to him, I said, listen to it. I said, that's an amazing production you've done, but there could be a guitar solo at the end. I said, imagine Jimmy Page doing Stairway to Heaven. Do your Stairway to Heaven at the end of that, which he did, and it's just bloody amazing. I put out a video of him. He was at the solo that he did. He actually mimed to doing it, and in fact, this was 2 years later. And he said he had to go back and relearn the bloody solo. So on the video, and I put that out, and it got 3,000 plays because he's quite well known and he's got his own fan club and things. So, and I said, well, that's great, really good. So I played it, the guitarist, and he went, well, it's not what I wanted, but it's very good. And I said, well, we've got both of them. That's just great, that's nice. And it was at this time that this guy said, well, look, I haven't got any work on this summer. And this would be 2022. So he said, I've got no work on this summer, so I finish work by September, and I want you to come down for a few weeks, and we'll put this stuff together, and we'll get musicians in to play on it. And I said, okay, fine. So I was just waiting to go down in September. So I start writing new material. It inspired me. And a lot of the stuff was still harking back to my divorce and things like that. I hadn't got that out of my system yet. So I was still writing a breakup album, basically. And then the guitarist gets in touch and says, hey, I've just been offered a film by Warner Brothers, post-production, and it's going to take me in the next 6 months. I can't say no to it. And I said, that's okay. We'll do it in 2023. And he said, well, we'll see what we can do. He then got back to me and said, I'm going to be on this for a year, if not 18 months. And I said, that's okay, no problem. We'll do it when you finish. And he said, no, I've rung Neil up because he did I Really Care. And I've asked him if he would produce the album. And I said, well, Neil's a really great friend of mine. I've known him since he was 16. Basically, Neil says I discovered him, which to an extent is true, because I was looking for a guitarist, saw him, asked this old chap next to me, who's the kid on the guitar? And his dad said, that's my boy, that is. And I said, here, I wrote down my number and said, tell him to give me a ring. I want to see him. And when he came over, I didn't realize, but he knew of me from the previous band I'd been in, Bristol. And at that time, I didn't know that we were very well known. I had no clue, to be honest. And he said, if Gavin King from Uncle Poe thinks I'm really good, then I must be. So I said to him, we want you to join our band. And he said, no. I must be as good as you think I am. I'm going to form my own band. So off he went, and we lost him. But over time, we worked with him an awful lot anyway, with the Dicks and everything else. And we've been best mates for a long time. So he rang me up and he said, I don't know what your songs are like, mind. He said, I Really Care was a really good song, and I enjoyed that. What's the rest of your stuff like? And I said, well, I've written it on computer with some very old samples. It's an old program that I used in the 90s to write stuff. And I found it the other day and thought, I'll retry it, see what happens. And I said, and I've got a couple that have come up, so I can sing a very rough demo for you and send one over to you. And he said, oh, yeah, okay, send it over. So I sent him over a track called Blood and Blues. Now, this was a song in memory of my brother, who died when he was 46. He was a victim of what I call the counterculture. He was into an awful lot of things and died early. And I wrote a song about him, about his mod days, because he was a face during the mod days in our area, and he had mohair suits and he was the bee's knees. If you've seen Quadrophenia, you know what he looked like. I've got some great photos of him, and I just basically wrote this song about what his life was like and what a waste, basically. You silly sod, doing what you were doing and then bloody dying like that. So anyway, I sent it over to him, and the next thing I know, Neil came, he said, I've done a version of it. I'll send it over to you. It was bloody awesome. I mean, it was like nothing I could believe. And I said, that is really, and he said, are there any changes on it? Well, I said, well, yeah, I'd like to do this and that. And he said, just put it in an email or do me a voicemail and send it over, and I'll try and do it, and I'll send it back. So he sent me probably 7 or 8 mixes, and I made changes each time that he sent it over. I got used to him going, all right, what's the but then? Because I was going, it's great, but. And, yeah, but. And then he'd go, oh, fucking hell. And I said, well, it's only a little bit. And he was going, all right. Anyway, we got to the stage and it was this first one, and it just sounded great. It really did. And I sent it off to the guitarist and he loved it. And he sent it off to somebody else. Long, convoluted thing. This sort of ended up going to a number of people who started chatting about it, saying, have you heard Gav's new solo stuff? And somebody, I didn't know he was doing an album. He said, well, I don't know whether it's an album, but he's done a couple of songs with Neil. What, Neil Taylor? Yeah. Oh, bloody hell. Neil's working with him. Well, it's got to be worth hearing. So by the time this is built up, we'd done 3 songs together. And the same thing happened, got sent to some people. They said, he's got another one out. I've listened to this one. And that got through to Simon Edwards, who lives down the road from me, who was the owner of Heartbeat Records. Now, he actually works with a guy called Mike Darby, who has a record label called Sugar Shack Records, and also he's got Bristol Vintage Records. So he collects demos of Bristol bands from the punk era and things like that, and then puts together a collection, puts them out, and then sells them. So me and him don't get on too well. There's a long story involving his sister, actually, but never mind that. But so Simon heard these tracks, and he rang up a mate of his who was actually now the bass player in a band called the Glaxo Babies, who are quite a well-known Bristol band. He actually was in a band called the Europeans, and then he was in a band called Apartment. And the guitarist from Apartment, when Kurt Smith left Tears for Fears, he joined Roland and became Kurt's replacement. So there were all these connections in it. So anyway, Simon rings up this guy, Steve Street, because he just got into mastering. And he used to be, I worked with him back in the 80s, and he was an engineer then, and he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But he got married, had to earn a living, went into computers and whatever, and he was retiring. So he bought a lot of mastering stuff because he thought he could do a great job on it. And he was mastering all the stuff for Bristol Vintage Records, or Bristol Archive Records, I think they're called, Archive Records. So he said to Simon, did you know that Gav King is doing some solo stuff? And he went, no, wow, that's amazing. Where's he living now? I haven't seen him for a number of years. And he said, well, he's living just up the road from you. And he went, what? And he said, well, he's up in Downend, you're in Fish Pond, it's about a mile between us. And he went, well, I didn't know that. How can I get in touch with him? And he said, oh, I'll find his telephone number. So he gave him my mobile, and he rang me up out of the blue and said, hello, Gav, it's Simon here from Simon Edwards, Heartbeat Records. And I went, yeah, mate, how are you? You know, and he said, can I come up and hear the stuff you're doing with Neil? I said, yeah, of course you can, you know, no problem. Now, at this point, Neil was mastering them himself on his stuff. He basically had the same program that Steve Street had, but when Steve Street said, can I master your stuff? He said, well, have a go at it, see what you can do. He sent the one back, and Neil rang me and he said, I'm not mastering anymore, Steve Street is. He said, right. He's got the same stuff at me, but he knows what to do, how to work it. He said, it's out of this world. He's stunning on his mastering. He said he's changed the songs. So I heard it, and you go, so now I'm thinking, whenever me and Neil have finished a song, we think it's great, we give it to Steve Street, he masters it, and it goes up a level. It's great. So Simon comes up, I play him the tracks that we did, and he said, this is bloody great stuff. I absolutely love it. He said, now, I know it's totally opposite to the Dicks and everything, but I think that's a great thing. I want to put it out on Heartbeat. And I said, but Heartbeat has been closed for 35 years. And he said, I'm gonna get it out of mothballs, and I'm gonna put your album out on it. And I went, wow. And he said, just keep on writing stuff and doing the tracks. And that was probably last autumn. And me and Neil had just been slowly getting the tracks together. We had 8 tracks. We were really happy with it. Simon was happy with it. Steve Street was happy with it. My guitarist mate thought it was great. So we said, right, we're going for it now. And that's when I said, oh, hang on a minute, I've got one new one to go on there. Then I said, oh, I've got another new one to go on there. And literally one of the tracks that we finished yesterday that I got the masters of today, if that album had still been there, one of those tracks would have been on that. And that's actually the title track of the follow-up album, which is called Every Scar Is Mine. So I'm quite glad in a way, because Simon Edwards from Heartbeat Records rang me today and he said, I've just heard that new song. He said, I don't think I've ever heard a song with so many hooks in it. And he said, thank God the album went off, because you can use that on the next one. So I said, okay. And that big monologue I just gave you is up to date. So, any questions?
You must have thought, there must have been a point, particularly in the last couple of years, as you're working away and producers are coming in and all these tracks are coming back in different ways. Yeah. You must have thought this would never be a reality.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Jesus, I had my 71st birthday, and you know, at 71, you're thinking, who the hell would even think about doing that? And the thing was, Simon said, well, to be honest, you sound as if you're in your bloody 20s. And he said, and I look at it and I think when people hear these tracks and they want to know who is doing them, he said, I think that we turn out and say, well, actually, it's this old punk rocker. Of course, I wasn't a punk rocker, but you know, titles and everything.
Yeah.
Is now 71 and he's done a solo album, and this is him. And he said the music business is that much different now, especially in the I don't know whether it's in the States, in the UK, they're embracing people of an age who are still actually producing their music and doing it brilliantly, and they're getting on TV shows and stuff like that. So, and I said, okay, if you want to, and so I designed the vinyl sleeve, and then I said to him, I really want to make it so that the album has a theme, which is basically, as you can see, I've got a lot of stories that I rap out occasionally and stuff, and people have been saying to me, why don't you write a book and put them in a book? And I said, well, I'm not a writer. I mean, my son is a journalist. He's tried to ghost it for me. But when we got together, we just got drunk. So, and I said, so I can't do that, but I've got this one song about my brother. I've also got another song about my ex-wife. And I've got a song that I've written for my grandchildren, saying basically that I hope that if you listen to the words of this song, you will see that you don't have to worry about the mistakes you made. They can make your life. Don't let it define you. And I wanted them to get to that. And then I came up with this track, Skeletons. And that was basically, when I finished it, I thought, no, that's the end of the album. That's the last track. I can hear it finishing off. And I'd actually been saying to people, this is the first, I never thought in my life. I mean, I've suffered from depression all my life, and like a lot of us in the music business, I'd given up ever any thought of happiness, for God's sake. I didn't even believe in happiness, but I always said I would like to find contentment at some point. And bugger me, I get into my 70s, this comes along, and all of a sudden, the contentment that I thought was out in the ether somewhere suddenly comes in with that. And I'm also then starting to write nice songs, for God's sake. I mean, quite nice songs about people. And it was a different tune, but the whole of the album is essentially, there's two. I looked at my life and thought, what are the most important bits that stick out? One of them was when I went to, and this is the opening track on the Skeletons album. It's called Shark Eyes. And one of the things that really hit me when I was thinking back on moments was when I went to see my future father-in-law and went to ask him for his daughter's hand in marriage. Now, he was a very, very wealthy man who worked in the House of Lords in England. His daughter was a dental surgeon. She had gone to private school or public school, as we say over here, and all this was going on. And I can't believe that I had the gall or the arrogance to go and ask him if I could marry his daughter, because I had a ruby in this ear, a punky haircut, I had a scruffy pair of very tight jeans on, and a leather jacket. And I went in there, and he was very nice to me when I was going out with her, and we went out for a couple of meals and whatever. But not in a million years did the poor sod think he was going to end up with me as a son-in-law. I mean, in fact, he told me later that he thought that he had his daughter down to marry the heir to the Earl of Derby, who owns the most of Midlands to North England. They own the whole lot. And his son and heir really was very, very keen on the girl I was going out with. And my father and the Earl had actually made this thing up where they were going to get the two of them together. And so I turn up and I go into, and I said, Tom, can I have a word with you, please? And he said, yes, Gavin, by all means, sit down. What? He didn't have a clue what was coming. And I said to him, well, I want to do this properly. I would like your permission to marry Helen, please. And there was silence and more silence. And then he just started staring at me. So I stared back at him and I thought, oh shit, this is gonna be good. And we were just sat staring at each other, not saying anything. I mean, it seemed to go on forever, but it was probably a minute or so. And he then went, well, if that's what Helen wants, then that's what Helen will do. And he got up and walked out of the room. And I thought, oh my God. And Helen was in the kitchen with her mother. And the mother said to her, what's Gavin doing in there? And she said, oh, he's asking Daddy for permission to marry me. And her mother went, oh, the poor lamb. And I remember it, looking at him and thinking his eyes went dead. Shark when it's feeding. You know, their eyes sort of go black, old. And that's what I was thinking. My God, he was looking at me with shark eyes. And that's where the title came from. And I thought, I'm writing about that. So I wrote, and you can see in the lyrics, I actually talk about the silence in that room is echoing over the Mersey to this day. Now, as it was, we got on really well when I was married to her. You know, he was we became quite close. But I just remember that. And as I said, I can't believe I had the arrogance to turn up and do that. Why didn't someone say to me, you can't go to him and ask them? I mean, you know, you're just a poor little pop star. You're not even a pop star yet. But Helen thought I was going to be massively successful. She was convinced I was going to be a big star.
You
And
wouldn't have listened anyway, right? Like,
no,
even if someone had told you.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Why not? Look at me. So that was that one. Now, the next song after that is called Profiled. And this is where this story comes in about Simon Pegg, the actor. And it's the God's honest truth. It's been put out there now. His PR company know about it, and they're ignoring people who are getting in contact to ask them stories. But it literally was the third part of the Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and then there was World's End.
Yeah.
And he came into my village where I live. Nobody knew he was there, to do research with the local Bobby, the local policeman, for Hot Fuzz. And whilst he was there, the copper would walk past my house to go into the pub, which was next door to where I lived. And he pointed out to him and said, oh, he's interested in there. He said he's an old rock star and he still dresses like a rock star. Of course, I wasn't, but they all thought I was. And they knew I was going out with a band and singing. So he told him all the stories that I had told in the pub. And then this friend of mine was flying to New York and she sent me a text saying, I've just been watching you on the TV on the plane. And I said, what are you on about? She said, well, have you seen Simon Pegg's latest movie, World's End? I said, no, don't know anything about it. She said, I think you ought to go and see it. So I went with my youngest daughter, and when youngest daughter said, why are we doing this? I said, well, we'll just see how it is. And the film starts, and then we find out the lead character, the one that's based on me, is called Gary King. And I thought, bloody hell, that's a bit close. And my daughter looked at me and she said, is this film about you? I said, well, I don't know. And of course, it's about Gary King getting his band together to go on a pub crawl. And my daughters go, it is about you. It's about you and the Dicks, isn't it? And I said, no, I don't. And basically, he based this character on me. And he called me a sad man-child in interviews, and said that I was the worst case of arrested development he'd ever come across. And instead of getting the band back together, as I did in 2005, he did it so that he got his drinking buddies together. And this is 20 years later, they're all married, all got really good jobs, but he gets them back for one more big piss up on the Golden Mile, where they go to 12 pubs and drink a pint in each of them. So that was how he twisted the tale. But in the film, as I'm watching it, stories that I told were turning up as his anecdotes. He was using them during the film. I thought, Christ almighty. And I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know whether to be flattered or whether to feel, well, as I put it in the lyric, how did I put it? I didn't know whether to feel defiled or to be shouting out, you know, hey, I've been profiled. And it was only when I actually did that song and everybody said, well, I think that's a single anyway, that then the PR people got hold of it and said, it's a really good thing to get some publicity on. So that's how that happened.
I can't even imagine ever being in that situation where effectively you say your life has been taken to a degree and used in such a fashion.
I know.
Um, do you, at, now, as it stands now, have you settled on what you feel? Do you feel honored or defiled or offended?
Well, the one thing that settled that was that I saw an interview with Simon Pegg probably only 6 or 8 months ago. And in that, they were talking about, there were rumors that he was going to do a fourth cornetto.
Hmm.
And he was being interviewed, and they asked him, and he said, "No, no, I don't think that that will ever be done. I'm happy with the three." Now, World's End is no doubt wasn't reviewed very well. They thought it was quite poor compared to the other two. That was fine. So they were asking, they said, "Well, which character out of all your films is your favorite one?" And he said, "Well, this will probably shock you because World's End wasn't received very well." He said, "But the character of Gary King is my favorite. Uh,
Hmm.
yes, he's a sad man child. Yes, he's suffering from arrested development. But I really love the fact that he's still doing what he's doing. And he's saying, 'Fuck you lot.' And he carries on. And he said, and deep down, I know he's a really, really nice guy." And at that point, I thought, oh, okay, then it's not so bad then. So in the song, I basically ask, I say, well, I feel a bit weird about even writing the song and singing about it when I think it's a bit off. But on the other hand, I'm actually going around to people saying, "Have you seen World's End? It's about me." So, and there's that dichotomy, you know.
Yeah,
So
they clearly didn't come to ask your permission, so why the hell not?
so I just thought, hey, it's it's a good song. It really is very catchy, and it tells the tale actually perfectly lyrically. So that I would love to think at some point he would actually. People could say to me, "Well, have you met him?" And I don't know, but if ever I did, I'd like to go up to him and say, "Simon, hello, Gavin King, Christian Mulford," because his PR company got back to the journalist who got in touch with them, and they said, "Well, we don't know what you're on about. What village was this in? What was the name of the policeman that he was with? What was the name of the pub they used to go into?" And I said to him, "You can tell him it's Christian Mulford. The PC was Philip Hines, and the pub is called the Rising Sun. And if you look at the end of the film, when he's about to go on the Golden Mile again with a load of aliens, the camera goes up to a pub sign, the first pub they're going into, and that's the Rising Sun." Now, I looked when I saw that, I thought, "That's it. That's it. That's the final nail in the cotton in the coffin." You know, I came out of there really quite shocked. I'm thinking, "What the hell's happened to me?" And I was talking to a friend of Private Dick's who lives in Canada now about this. He said, "Oh, I heard you've been profiled." And I said, "Profiled? What's that mean?" And he said, "Well, do you remember when Geraldine, and that's the guitarist's first girlfriend?" He said, "You know, Geraldine's had a book published." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I read it." And he said, "Well, the story she's based that on is about my sister." And I went, "Oh, well." He said, "And my sister was told, well, you've been profiled. There's nothing you can do about it." Because she was quite upset because it was quite a deep and dark secret that was about. But and he said, "Well, she's been told you've been profiled." He said, "So you've been profiled." And I hadn't actually heard the term before, but then I thought, well, it's a good name for a song. So I just wrote down profiled and I made that the chorus.
That inspired you. But
Yeah,
these days, where are you drawing your current inspiration from?
interesting you should ask, because obviously I've stopped writing, if you like, about my past life. I've
Hmm.
those songs I've done a song called Infant Weight Card, which is basically about the first 6 months of my life. when my mother died, I was going through some stuff, and she'd kept my infant weight card where they monitor your weight for the first 6 months to see how much is going on. And through that, I was able to realize my mother had told me later, she said, I didn't want you at all. I tried to get rid of you. And people have said to me, my God, she didn't. How did that feel? And I said, actually, it didn't bother me. I said, look, I'm a historian. I'm a researcher. This is all grist to the mill for me. This is just what I want to hear. It's great. I'll write it down, you know. And looking at this card, it looks like my mother had postnatal depression when I was born. Now, the reason for that was that my brother, who I wrote Blood and Blues about, had a terrible birth, and he cried for the first 5 years of his life. And when my mother got pregnant again, which was a total mistake, she said, if I have another boy, I'm going to kill it. And they were all worried to hell, and the doctor was called and God knows what. So when I was born and I was a boy, she fell apart. And for 6 months, I think, I struggled through. And so I wrote a song about that. So there's those bits that I've gone through it. And then now, let me say what, right. The song that we just finished now is called Every Scar Is Mine. I was watching a documentary about Ellis Island and the refugees and the emigrants coming into America, and watching it in black and white and seeing how they were coming off with bundles of clothes, carrying babies and old men shuffling along. And it got me thinking about Ukraine, about the wider implications of this, that was there. And they were being welcome, if not welcome, they were being allowed in. And they were going to face shit when they got there, but that was it, they were going in. And it started me thinking about that. And basically, it then, I thought, what would you feel like going in? And I was reading some stuff about it, and this one guy was saying, well, I turned up and I knew who I was, but basically they gave me a new name. And I thought, that's not who I am. And he thought, I'm going into this country with a new name. I can't speak English, and I've got nothing. I've got nothing at all. All I've got is my body. So that inspired me to write this song. And I started seeing it at the same way that I have felt worthless. My self-loathing goes with my depression and whatever. And I started seeing a sort of parallel there, to the extent that I felt I wasn't worth anything. I hadn't achieved anything. And then because I've been writing about these things in my family history, I had this phrase came into my head, and I thought, well, they can't take my scars away from me. And somebody said to me, but you haven't got any scars. I said, no, the metaphorical ones inside, the ones that you've dealt with, that you thought might destroy you, but they haven't. They're still there, you know, but you've dealt with them. And they're yours. They're your story. So, and I ended up saying, so every scar is mine, all right? I earned those. And I got a pen and I wrote down, every scar is mine. And then I just started this thing about, the first line is, when I stepped ashore, in this body, I was recognized. But I'll let you see the lyrics for it. But essentially, I just sent it off to the guitarist, and he sent back to me and he said, those lyrics are bloody amazing. He said, where did you get them from? And I said, I don't know. I know I came up with this phrase, every scar is mine. And I've now looked back on those, and I can only remember perhaps one or two places where I thought about what I wanted to write. Everything else came freeform. I ended up with a sheet of paper like that, and I just wrote down what I was thinking. So it was automatic writing almost. And what I do then, I go back and I'll leave it. And when I've got a tune that I need to find a lyric to fit to the tune, I go through my papers and I just start rifling through and looking. And I came across this Every Scar Is Mine, and I thought, oh, that would go great on that chord, and it fits the thing. So then I started crossing some lines out, thinking, oh, that fits with that, and that fits with that. And that's how it came about. On the other hand, that's that one. On the other hand, the other song we did yesterday that we've just heard is called Life's Transformation, but in brackets, it's called Oxy Me Up, and it's about America and all the people dying from that company. Now, I don't know whether you've seen the program, but it's called Painless. It's on Netflix.
No.
Seriously, watch it. It's I got so angry watching it.
It's about OxyContin, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's stunning because it's literally a dramatization of the company, how they came up with that fucking drug, and how they knew how. I mean, I thought it was 30 times stronger than heroin. I saw the other day somebody saying it's 50 times as strong. I don't know, but whatever it is, that company are responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths because they bloody knew what that was. But the program is about how the people invented it, how they managed to get it past the drug administration, and then how they got beautiful, hunky men and beautiful women to be the reps to go out and sell it. And they had this line in there, and it goes, when they were doing the training, if anybody was starting to have a feeling guilty about this, what you want me to go in, this drug is like, and you're saying it's not addictive, but we think it is. They had this song, it's either a song or a chant, but it goes, beautiful, wonderful, revolution, wonderful, beautiful, revolution. Again, the lyrics can be done, but that's the chorus. They was doing that, and as I'm watching it, and this happens a number of times, I'll be watching a TV program and I'll think, whoa, there's some good stuff in that. So I have a pad and a paper, and I'm thinking, this is really bloody good stuff. So when they were doing that song, I thought, that's the chorus. So I made sure I got it down word perfect. And they used to get them chanting this. It was like mind-washing. And then they go out and sell this stuff to the doctors. The girls were sleeping with the bloody doctors. The men were going out to the women, and they were making a fortune, and they were trying to justify the fortune they were making. The company themselves were making fucking billions. Man, it's a terrible, terrible story. And I just thought, that was down, and I thought, it will make a good song, because I think everybody should see that program. Those people ought to be in jail for what they've done. It's appalling. It really is. The deaths of people, the signs that you see of the people, so many of them just stuck there. They can't move. It's appalling. And especially with my background, knowing what my brother was like and how he died early, it really resonated. Anyway, I was in a pub in Bristol, which is in a pretty rough area. And I was in there with a friend of mine, and it's well known for criminal activities, drug dealers, and God knows what. So I was actually in there, and I heard this kid talking with this guy saying, "What have you got?" Blah, 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 blah. And he must have said to him, he got oxycontin, right? Because I heard the kid say, "Yeah, oxy I up." And it was that Bristol accent. And I laughed. And this guy I was with said, "What are you laughing at?" I go, "That kid over there, he just said, 'Yeah, oxy I up.'" And he said, "What's it about?" So I then started to tell him, and I said, "And it's fucking 30 times stronger than." He said, "Jesus Christ, they shouldn't be." And I said, I know, but they're doing it." And I said, "And it's all about this." So he went back and watched that program, and he's saying to me, "Write a bloody song about it." So what I've actually got is this chant as the chorus, and then afterwards it's just the voice going, "Oxy me up, oxy me up." And so that's how I did that one. I've just done one which I'm really pleased with called "Oh Laura." And back in the day, I never watched Twin Peaks, and they're repeating it. And so I'm watching the first episode. Where's my bloody book? Here it is. You'll probably recognize this. Where is it? Right. So I'm watching it, and the first line, I thought, "Whoa!" And I put it on pause, and I got a pad and a piece of paper, and I ran it back and started it again. And it goes, "The lonesome foghorn blows in the blossom of the evening. I can tell by the sounds it isn't her." So then I just wrote that down. So that's the first verse, basically. And then as they're going through, I'm taking phrases that they're saying. So there's "Fire, walk with me." "Snake man, let's go." "So I changed my mind. Well, I'm not sorry." And then it's "Oh, Laura," 3 times, and then "My baby," because that's what the mother says. "Oh, Laura, my baby." And that's the chorus. And then it comes out and it goes, "It's a clean place and reasonably priced. Flesh world, $10,000. Catherine, when the bureau is called, the bureau is in charge." And then right down at the end, I've got this thing, it goes, "There's a voice inside my head. I can't understand a single word of what it said." And basically that's "Oh, Laura." And that's for the next, well, actually, I don't know, I've done the demo for it. I've done the vocal, and but it's still waiting for Neil to take in. But since we've done the first one and the second one is now finished, that's going to be, well, that's there for the third one.
Fascinating. Twin Peaks inspired. Laura Palmer as well. Very, very familiar with it. So immediately I'm like, okay, I recognize a lot of those lines as well. I got one more for you though, Gav, because we are coming up to an hour and 15 minutes.
Surprise.
Heartbeat Records, of course. The album Skeletons is coming out on vinyl, limited edition 300.
Yeah.
Was it a must in your eyes to get this out on vinyl? Because obviously everything today is digital and Spotify and streaming and all that. But were you insistent, "I want this on vinyl"?
I had this argument with my youngest son, who said to me, "Dad, everything, who's going to buy it? Everything is digital nowadays. All my friends, that's what they do." I mean, young guy, he knows everything. And I said to him, "So why have I been giving you all my vinyl records, slowly letting you have them? Because you've got a disc, you've got the speakers, and you're listening to my albums from 40 years ago, 50 years ago." I said, "I'm letting you," and he went, yeah, okay, I know." And I said, "Well, I know that apparently CDs are making a slight recovery. And then they're talking about tapes making a slight, but I mean, this is all sort of, I think this is all retro shit anyway. But the vinyl thing, I had a friend of mine who died 3 years ago overnight. He just disappeared. He lived in a house and he didn't have to decorate because all of the walls everywhere, in all the bedrooms, everywhere he could, were vinyl records. He had some worth thousands in there, and his 24-year-old son inherited the whole lot. And
Mm.
I know that he doesn't know what he's got there. But this guy had every John Peel show on cassette, every one. I'm not kidding. He even went round buying them up off people so he could get the collection. So
Wow.
that's how crazy these people are. And I thought, for me personally, I want it on vinyl and I want it with a gatefold sleeve, and I want it with heavy duty vinyl, the best there is. And I got the quote back for 300, and basically they're 10 quid a copy. But I said, okay, I'll take it out the kid's bloody inheritance. Sodom. Because I mean, when I got divorced, I had a good divorce settlement. So I've been using that basically just to enjoy my retirement. I retired at 57, you see. So and I just thought, well, yeah, I can use that. I can use that. And the guy said, but that's going to be over 3,000 quid. And I said, in the scheme of things, that's nothing. I said, and if we manage to sell these, and I said, and that's a big if, I know, but if we could, then I'll get some money back, and that'll do the next one. And he went, you definitely doing the next one? I said, there's some bloody good songs there that didn't get on the first one. I want them there. The second album is not. I've always been very concerned about the second album syndrome. I remember the Stranglers did their first album, and interestingly, I was in the studio next door to them when they were doing that in London, and they put all the best songs on the first album, as you do, very good. But then instead of writing new ones for the second one, the record company wanted the second one straight away, so they put the majority of the songs that didn't get on the first one. So I'm determined that each song that gets on that second one is worth it. And if it means I've got to write new ones, that's fine by me. I've got 18 waiting to be done. And Neil's just picking out the ones and saying, I want to do that one and I want to do that one, which is why we did Every Scar Is Mine and Oxy. But then that's why we did Profiled, because Neil said, it's a great song, it's a great story, and it's going to make a great single. Put it on the bloody album. One of the songs I did in there is called We've All Got That One, and this is on the Skeletons album. And it was the last song I wrote until about a month ago. And it's all about that one girl or that one bloke that people have in the past when they were teenagers. That one you fall madly in love with, and she goes off with somebody else, but you never forget her. Because in history, there are so many people out there who this happened to, that they still had this one that they still think about. If you think about Rosebud, I mean, it's that sledge, but it's the same thing. It's that one thing that actually drags you back. And a year ago, this one from mine, funny enough, it'll be her 69th birthday, March the 23rd, 4 days before the album comes out. I wrote this song, We've All Got That One, and I wrote it a year ago. I found out where she was. I've been searching for her for so long. I've written so many songs about her, and I found out where she was. And I managed to send her just something, and I just sort of said, hey, I don't know whether you remember me, but, this is Gav and stuff. Well, she came back. She said, as soon as I got this, I ran into my husband going, it's him. He's got in touch with me. And I said, what? She said, oh, God, I still think about you. He knows that. She said, actually, when I married him, and this is her second marriage, she said, you got mentioned at the wedding. I said, what? She said, well, Marcus, my brother. And I said, yeah, I remember Marcus. She said, well, Marcus thought you were the bee's knees because he was 14 at the time. And at that time, I had hair down here, so it was right down there at that time. I wanted to be Paul Rodgers out of 3.
Of course.
Of course I did. And at the reception, because her dad was dead, her brother gave her away. And he started the speech by saying, well, when Carol told me she was getting married again, I thought, oh, God, she's met up with that bloody rock star again. And I said, well, that's bloody amazing. Anyway, when I got it mastered and everything else, I sent her a copy. And I didn't know whether she'd listened to it or anything else. But half an hour later, I got a message back and it said, I've just listened to it 3 times and I'm just wiping my eyes now. Thank you. So on the album, she's called Carol Plant now. This is a second marriage, but she used to be called Carol Scott and I used to call her Scotty. So just on the album underneath, I put for Scotty.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah. I love it. And I mean, she's going to look at that and go, oh my God. Good. And I'm not saying I wish her husband ill or anything, but if he was to have a sudden cardiac arrest and not survive, I would like to go and offer my condolences. She actually said to me, come and meet him. I said, I don't think so. And she got back to me. She said, I think that's a good job, actually. He's quite jealous.
I would imagine so. Incredible stuff. Gav, on that note, we'll have to call time there.
No problem. Thanks very much. It's been good.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.